the Missouri Rental Agreement. In this video, we will tell you about the most noteworthy aspects of rental agreements in the state of Missouri. What is a rental agreement? A rental agreement, or a lease, is a document that outlines the arrangement between two parties regarding a property rental. The one who's paying rent is called a tenant, while the owner of the property, who lets the other party use it under certain conditions, is called a landlord. The parties may also be called a lessor and lessee. Typically, a rental agreement lasts for 6 or 12 months, with rent being paid every month or every week. There is one federal disclosure that works for all lease agreements in the United States. This is called the lead disclosure, and it requires the landlord to tell the tenant about all known lead paint hazards. They should also provide the state-approved version of the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. However, this requirement applies to not all types of residential dwellings. Required disclosures. Apart from the above-mentioned disclosure, the landlord should also disclose to the tenant the names and business addresses of the people who own and are authorized to manage the rental unit. One more piece of information the landlord should provide before entering into the rental agreement with a prospective tenant is if the premises were or are used as a site for methamphetamine production, regardless of whether the persons involved in the production were convicted for such production. Security deposits. According to the Missouri Revised Statutes, the maximum security deposit cannot exceed 2 months' rent. The landlord should return the security deposit within 30 days after the termination of the tenancy. The landlord can use the deposit to pay unpaid rent or repair any property damages caused by the tenant after conducting an inspection for damages on the premises. The tenant can be present at such an inspection. If the landlord fails to return the security deposit, they may be liable for up to twice the amount wrongfully withheld. Landlord Access. The Missouri laws do not set a specific time frame for an entry notice for the landlord before accessing the rented apartment to inspect the premises, make repairs, etc. However, at least a 24-hour notice is always recommended. Termination of agreement. In case of year-to-year tenancy, at least a 60-day notice before the end of the year is required by either of the parties. For a month-to-month tenancy, at least a 1-month notice prior to a periodic rent-paying date is needed. Notices for non-payment and non-compliance. If the tenant fails to pay rent, the landlord is able to immediately recover the possession of the rented premises without any written notice sent to the tenant beforehand. If there is another breach of the rental agreement by the tenant, at least a 10-day notice is required by Missouri law.